Okay, so you can see my screen, right? So today I'm going to just extend pretty much most of the time to whiteboard. Okay, so last week we talked about two different programming models. The first one is called event-driven model. So that is you. How would I say that? Is kind of a model in comparison with old programming, which is more like a black box programming, versus so-called console programming. Model. In the console programming model, in the old days, we do not have, this so-called graphical user interface, and there was really no mouse. There was just keyboard, and a program when you write a program will just simply start and run all the way to the end. In the middle, you may just occasionally put in like a data using keyboard. Okay, and so in that at that time, 1960s, 70s, 80s. Those years, we write a code pretty much like black box, and then program just when it starts, it will will runs from the beginning to the end without a stop. Okay, so nowadays event-driven programs will start and inside the memory and wait for users to respond, and that the model we're using is called event-driven model. Okay, and then we talk about so-called OO object-oriented model, and that model is in comparison to all this model called structured model. So the difference between this, they are just different levels of way to organize the code. So basically, is a model. Those are model on how to structure code. So in object-oriented model, basically all the code will be organized into something called classes, and use classes to create objects. But in the structured programming, you organize all your code into so-called functions, and then all functions are in parallel, and then there will be a function called a main function, which will be starting point to start to run your program, and the main function will call other functions to be executed step by step. Okay. Structured programming is still available, it still exists out nowadays. So if you're using some of the programs, like for example R, like some kind of scripting code like JavaScript, most of the time you are dealing with pretty much structured a way to organize your code, just creating functions. Okay. So in this class, of course, we are going to just stick with object-oriented model, which is pretty, is ongoing, is current model. Most industry is using that model. Okay, so we talk about these two models, and what we're going to talk about today is what about the basic program elements, basic programming element, which is, we can call that as a command or statement. Okay, so today we're going to focus on that. Individuals, so put aside how we organize those statements, how to organize those comments. We talk about what are the basic elements, basic commands we can write. Okay, so in terms of that, we basically, no matter what programming language you are going to use 4 different basic statements. The first statement is so-called declare variables. Okay, so what does that do? So basically, inside the computer's random access memory, so if this is run, okay, and then inside the memory, you have many locations. So this is maybe first 4 bytes, second 4 bytes, second, third 4 bytes. So basically, all of them are in a consecutive order. This is memory locations. Okay, memory locations. So what are the variables? A variable, just simply memory location. Simply a memory location. Okay, so just make sure that you do not confuse a variable with mathematical variables. Mathematical variables we learn in mathematics. Okay, here the variable is just simply a memory block. Okay, so what does declare variable mean? Declare variable say we have it run here. Okay, so suppose I declare a variable called x, so that memory block will be named as x. Okay, and then how big is the variable, how big the memory block should be, and that really depends on the type of variable you declare. So suppose I want to declare a variable to hold a piece of integer data. So then the way to declare that is integer x. Okay, so this type integer basically determines that this memory block. So this memory block is going to be 32 bits or 4 bytes. 4 bytes. Okay, so what about if I want to have data to hold the decimal numbers? For decimal numbers, suppose we are using so-called double, that's double precision decimal number. So let's say double Y. So what does that do is computer just simply allocate a memory block and then name that block called Y, and the location, the memory block size, will be 64 bits, equals to 8 byte. 8 byte. Now, so far you should understand the difference between x and y, between integer and double, right? Integers, those are numbers like whole numbers without decimal places, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or -1, -2, -3. But if you have -1.1, -5.9, and those numbers are decimal numbers, and you should use, this double to hold the data. Make sense? Now the question is, what if you put wrong kind of data into memory block? So suppose x is integer, right? So what if you put x? So let's say I want to put data into x. Okay, so this is how we do it. So that's called assignment. So what if I put 4.5 into this? Would that be possible? No, it will not be possible, because you can just imagine that in the 4.5 is decimal numbers, and it takes a lot more space than 4 bytes to hold. And this house, the 4 bytes, this integer, you can just imagine that is a smaller house. And then this 4.5 is a bigger guy, bigger person, and you cannot put the bigger person into a smaller house, right? And what about if I put like a 2 into that? Can that be possible? Yes, that's possible. So if you put a 2 like an integer, put inside a 2, inside the bigger house, a small guy in a bigger house, that's possible. However, in that case, the 2 will be automatically changed to, so I'm going to comment that 2 will be changed to 2.0, like that. So 2 automatically, just implicitly will be changed to 2.0. Okay, so in other words, this is, you can just kind of like stretch, the smaller guy into like a bigger guy, put into the bigger house. All right, so what if I just want to put integer portion of this 4.5 into x? And to do that, this is what it would do. It would just simply say x equals 2, and then put a 4.5 here still. But then in here, you put, say, integer. So that means you only take the integer portion of it and cast into integer portion of 4.5 into x. And that is possible. That's okay. So that means, so so whatever 4.5, 0.6, those decimal places will be removed. Only the whole integer portion will be put into x. Okay. So that is that is how we can convert, two type of numbers, okay, in the integers and decimal numbers. All right. So what are other type of variables you can declare? You can declare variables to hold a text. For text variable, and that is done through something called a string. Okay, string, small letter string. String, just imagine that is a string of characters. String of characters. Okay, so how to declare? So suppose I want to have variable to hold a job title, then I will say string job. Okay, string job. And similarly, if I want to have a variable to hold somebody's name, that is also text, right? So I will say string name. Okay. And then how are we going to put values into these variables? If you have like a fixed text, then you put those text inside double quotes. So for example, job equals to double quotes, and then say manager. So that's how, a variable, a memory block called a job, now we'll have a resident called a manager inside. All right. And then similarly, say the name equals to John Doe. Okay, semicolon is always the case. Semicolon. Okay, so end of a statement. We already know that, right? Okay. And when we use forms, in the forms we use text boxes, labels, and comment buttons in the combo boxes, all that. So in those cases, you always have like a text box value. Text box value are already as a text. So for example, if I have a text box called job, okay, then we'll say txt job dot text, and that will assign whatever value inside the text box into the job title, in the job variable. Okay. And what about individual characters? So just one character. So in that case, you're going to create a variable called a char type. So char, and just say a letter, okay, a letter, and then char again, another letter, second letter. So those are variable names. So I declare two variables to hold chars. Okay, now how the char variable will store each character as 2 bytes. 2 bytes of data. So basically just 16 bits. Okay, so that basically is Unicode. 2 bytes. But if you use so-called ASCII code, then each character is just 1 byte. Okay. So, but nowadays, we have so many. We have a program to process all the languages like Russian, Chinese, Japanese, and each character is 2 bytes. Okay. Now, how do we assign characters? How do we put data into the variables? So, for example, here a letter will be equal to. So, if you have a letter which is a fixed letter, so let's say I want to put a capital X into it. Then you will just use single quote, capital X. Okay, and then semicolon. Now what about second letter? So second letter let's say second letter, I want to put another character, which is like a what? Like a you know, when you use type of keyboard, there's tab control, right? So what if you want to have tab control? So for those tab controls, you will use a backslash and a T because they are not non-printable characters. So here, backslash plus anything, those are just kind of special characters. So for example, backslash n represent a new line character. Okay, and the backslash r means return character. Okay, so use the backslash and then another character is indicating the special characters. All right, so let's go over that. Say how many kinds of variables we have studied. We learned integer variables and decimal numbers, right? And then hold on. And then we talk about string or text variables or string variables, okay, and character variables. Okay, now next kind. Let's say if I want to have variables just hold simple, just true or false value, simple true or false. Then in that case, we are using a variable called a boolean. Okay, so boolean. Suppose is today sunny day? Yes or no? True or false? So let's name a variable. Say is sunny. Okay, and let's create another variable. Say bool again. Let's just say what is mouse clicked. Okay, so I name that variable using like 3 words. Okay, so they are all just simply take value true or false, right? So let's say how can we put values to it? And this is how we do it. So is sunny equals to, so you basically use true or false, simple word, true or false, okay? And this is actually true or false is 1 byte of data. So in other programming languages, say like C++, true is representing to 1. So true represent to 1, and false is equivalent to 0. Okay. So basically, just like a true false, it's just like a yes or no, true false, this type. So let's do it again. So yes is a mouse clicked. Let's say that's false. Even though this sounds like a text, they look like a text, right? True or false look like text, but you don't put double quotes around it. So it's wrong to put double quotes around that. Okay, and if you put double quotes, then you're going to get an error message, so that they cannot be converted to each other. Okay, so any other variables, any other type of data you can think of? Characters, chars, integers, and doubles. Okay, and then Boolean, true or false, right? Now, what about data time? Data time is not really a simple data, but in C#, we have a kind of object which allows us to create something and treat that as regular data. So that is using date time class. Okay, so let's say data time, say b date, birth date, b date. You can do that. Let's do another one. Say data time, and then order date. Okay, you can do that. Oh, by the way, when you declare 2 or more variables, you don't have the right, like this, you don't have the right to declare 1 by 1. You can just combine them together. So you can just do this, okay? And that is true for other variables too. So for example, date, time, and then b date. comma, and auto date. Okay, so if you have more, just simply add a comma and then continue. And then in the end, you still need a semicolon. Okay, and then the semicolon. So basically, you can just do that 2 at one time. All right. Now the question is, how can we put data into those variables? Okay, so if you have a variable called a bdate, how do I put data into it? So it's tempting to do something like this. Okay, so bdate. Okay, and then equal to, and then say January 1st, 2020. It's tempting to do that because there's a date and this date, right? However, this is not really a date. This is text. This is text. Okay, so in order to convert this text into date, then you will have to do conversion, right? So you will do something like this. So bdate, and then say convert to date, time, convert to data time, and then you can put a things inside. Okay, put it like text inside. Okay. Or if you just say I want to declare a data variable, can just put into may not using existing without any date, without any variable inside, any values inside. So if that is the case, you can do something like this: the date equals to new, and then date time. And parentheses, remember that is a constructor, right? And then this name of variable. So in that case, you will create just a memory block, and which will be just inside that is just all empty. Okay. And there's still another way to use a constructor to convert the text into this into value for date. So for example, you can do date equals to new date time, and then in this case I'm going to use another constructor which will take specific year, so 2020, comma, and then December, and then 30. So you can also do that. So that basically is not really equivalent to that because this is really text, but this is actually split into 3 numbers. Okay, but in effect this is another way you can put values into a data time. All right. So let's say that it should be all the common type of variables we need to process. Let me double check. So the two type of numbers: variable, char, string. Okay, yeah, that's about it. Okay, so next, now let's say if I have like a text, and then if I need to change to numbers, or if I have numbers, I want to change the text. So what do I do? So I think in last week class we exposed to some of that, right? So let's say suppose I have a text, okay? Suppose I have a text. So let's just say in the text box, okay, maybe the text is coming from text box, or maybe from a variable. So let's just say we have a string, okay, say string z, okay, and that string z has some kind of numbers inside. That's 21.39, something like that. But since you're putting double quotes into it, so this is actually text, right? This is inside it is number, but because you put double quotes around it, that is the whole thing is text. So basically, that you can put that text inside this variable because the variable is a string, right? So what if I want to get this number out of this double quotes? In that case, you're going to use conversion. So let's just say this number is like a decimal number, right? So I'm going to use double. Say double W equals 2, and then I will put I will use convert to double, and then put the whatever variable inside, and that is how we do conversions. Okay, now after we have W, that W is going to be text. Now what if I want to put it back into Z? So let's say Z equals to W, and you're going to get error message, right? Error, because this is number double, and this is text. So that's why you cannot do that. Okay, so the way to handle the conversion is I need to change whatever right hand side to the type of left hand side. So basically we'll say Z equals to convert to string. Okay, and then W. That is okay. So if you have a number and then you change the text, that would be a way to do it. Okay. So this is how we. This is first type of commands where we'll be writing, and that's called declare variables. So declare variables equivalent to computer instruction is computer will declare a memory block. Okay, the size of memory block will be dependent on the type of variable you declare. Okay, so whether you are declaring a data type, or string, or text, or char, or boolean, or whatever, and then the size will be determined by computer. Okay, the memory block name will be the name of variable. Okay, so remember the variable names always just one word, right? So we can have several words, but always start, with a smaller letter. First word we start with first smaller letter, and then succeeding or after that, other words will start with capital letter. We will come back, but do not use special characters. So special characters like a hyphen, space, okay, punch sign, what is that? Percentage sign. Those things should not be allowed. Okay, just use plain characters, and you make sure it's one word. So that is the first type of instruction is called declare variables. What about the second type of instructions? Second type of command is so-called variable assignment. Just a variable assignment. So what does that do is basically computer will put data into the variable, into memory block. So put data into memory locations. Okay, and we already explored some of them. So for example, if I want to put 19 into X, I will do X equals to 19, assuming that X was integer X, right? Integer X. Okay. So that's how this is what we call assignment. This is called assignment. All right. Now, Y equals to 24. That is also assignment. All right. And then Y, assuming Y was double, right? Y was double. Okay. So 24 is integer, but integer after putting to Y, it will become double. Okay. Basically, it will be stretched into like a 24.0, something like that. Okay. And we can also do something like say is Sunny equals to true. Okay. A job equals to salesman. All those are assignment. Okay. Now, this is what is important to understand. When you declare a memory block or variable, so declare variable, say here, suppose this is X, right? And before you can use this variable x for something, then you have to have value into it. So basically, this memory block, initially you have a random access memory, right? Random access memory. And this random access memory will be, say you're using that to run some programs, okay? So whatever, after you close the program, then some of the memory block may still occupied with previous data, all right? But now you open up a new program, the program you have written, and then you need to declare a variable called x, and this computer will just allocate whatever unused memory block for your x. Okay, so then originally the data inside could be some kind of leftover from previous programs. Okay, maybe this is x, maybe this is a y, or maybe there's some kind of 24 numbers. Okay, so it could be garbage, anything. Okay, anything. So then when you put data into it, so you make x equals to make x equals to say 24, and then they basically just say wipe out the entire thing. So whatever inside you get out, okay, and then put 24 into it. So that is what the computer will do when you make an assignment like that. And this process sometimes is called initialization too, because initially this variable could be anything, could be garbage. Okay, so you put data into it, initialize that. So that is called initialization. Okay, so basically you can say that is so-called first variable assignment. Okay, so basically whatever previous program leftover data is wiped out, and then you put new data, whatever the desirable data into it. Okay, maybe not desirable, maybe just data in the right size. So for example, we may not have a right data 24 to it, but we can put a 0 into it. Okay, or we can put some kind of other integer into it, so that way the original data is wiped out. Okay, and this process initialization. So initialize the memory blocks, memory locations. Okay, and then that comes to the third type of instructions called manipulate variables. Third type is called manipulate variables. Okay, so what does that do? That basically just use the variables to do calculations. So use variables for calculation. So that is what it does. Okay. So for example, we already have x, y, right? So x equals to 19 and y equals to 24. All right. So now if I want, say, multiply these numbers, then we'll do say x multiply by y. Okay. And then of course the result has to be stored somewhere. The result, because we have an integer and also double, then they multiply, the result is going to be double in general, more general type, right? So then we have to have a double z. We do not have a z. Let me just use something else. We already have a z somewhere. Okay, so let's try and use different one. So let's say this is double a. Okay, equals to x times y. Okay, so this is called manipulation. Okay, so basically using variables for calculation. That is what so-called manipulation. Okay, so when you do the manipulation, just make sure that if you put this x, y, whatever manipulation on the right hand side of a variable, and that variable is holding the temporary data, like holding that calculation result, right? And then make sure the type that both sides has to be matching. Okay, so here x times y is going to be double, so I declare double here. All right, but what if you declare say integer b equals to x times y? So in that case, you will get an error message because x is integer, however y is double. Okay, so integer times double, you're going to have decimal place, right? So then b is not able to handle that. Okay, so if you want to So once again, if you want just hold the integer portion of this, then you can do this. You can just say integer b equals to integer, and then x times y. That is okay. So basically, in that case, whatever result, the calculation will be converted into integer. So basically, just trim off those decimal places, and then the whole integer portion will be put into b. And this is called casting. Okay, which is conversion, right? Same thing. Okay. So this, if we were dealing with numbers, then we basically use multiplication. Basically this is a plus, right? Minus, we understand that, right? And then multiplication and division, okay? And then we can also use, when we do division, especially when you integer divisions, we can get the remainder. So use this one to get the remainders. So let me show you an example here. Suppose I have, okay, let's say integer x equals to 19. Okay, now let's declare another integer, say so a, b, c, let's see, okay, equals to 5. Okay, then x divided by c, the result should be what? Just whole integer portion, so that would be 3 only. And then x percentage sign c, that is a remainder. So that's remainder is 4, right? So 3 times 5, 15, and then 19 minus 15, the remainder is 4, right? So this is remainder. This is remainder. Okay. Remainder. Just not enough space to write. Okay, remainder. And what if you want to do calculations using exponent? So for example, how do I do things like see 24.5 to exponent to like a square to third place, something like that. And that you have to write something like this. You're going to use a math class, math, okay, dot, then p power, P-O-W, power, okay. And then the base is 24.5, and then comma 3. Okay, so this exponent. Okay. What about the square root? How do we do square root? So suppose I want to do 24.5 square root, and that we do something like a math. Okay, that SQRT, and then 24.5, like that. No, I'm just showing the equivalent representation. It's not, they are not the program statements. Okay, so that's how we do those type of exponential calculations or square root calculations. Okay, and then using math, you can also get say pi. That is like 3.14, something like that, right? So that is done by using math.pi. Okay, so you can use those so-called constant using math class. Okay, now what about, so this is about the numbers. So number calculation is most of the time just pretty easy. It's just kind of like what we learned in elementary school class. Now, what about the text? So can we use text for calculations? There are many texts, but today I'm going to introduce you something called text addition. Okay, suppose I have say string. Let's go back to here. Okay, string job, comma, name, right? Okay, so let's say job equals to double quotes manager, and the name equals to Jiang Dou. Okay, and for the text, you can use this plus operator. This plus operator is simply just concatenate or append. Okay, so basically, if I say, say if I have something like say John as text, right, and then plus Dou. So this text plus this text, that would be equal to Jiang Dou. And remember, there's no space here. Okay, there's no space if there's no space here. So what if you want to have a space in the middle? If you want to have a space in the middle, then you have to do things like this. So Jiang plus double quotes space here. Okay, then dot plus and then Dou. Okay, then you will get Jiang space Dou. Okay, now let's try to use variable name and the job to make a sentence. Okay, so I already just say job is equal to manager, name is Jiang Dou, right? So let's say I want to make a sentence like Jiang Dou has job title of manager. Make a sentence. So to do that, so we'll make a name first, right? Name plus, and then double quotes, and then we'll say, we'll put a space here, as a job, and then put a space here, and then plus job, right? So that we can just use, two plus operations, and that will result, this will get you to something like Jiang Dou has a job as manager. So that just this expression, this manipulation will result in this sentence. Okay. Okay. And that is about how do we handle text. Now let's say, what about date? So what are things we can do with date? Okay. So now let's say we have 2 days. Okay. Let's say data time again. Data time. Okay. And then say b date equals to. So let's just say convert. Okay. Use convert again. Convert to data time. Okay. So let's put some kind of data here. So that is this November 4th, November 5th, and 2019. Suppose this is date one. Great. Okay. So now the memory block b date will have this as a data time value. Okay. And this, remember, this is simply just text. Okay. This is not data time. However, if you actually convert into that, and then all of a sudden this data time allow you to do a lot of calculations. Okay. So for example, you can just say, if you want to get a current year number, so integer year or birth year, let's just change it to birth year. Birth year. That will be equal to b date dot year. Okay. And again, if you want to get a birth, like a birth month, a birth date, you can do the same thing. Just say b. Let's do it again. Okay, b months. That would be equals to b date dot month. Okay. And after you have that, you can do other things here. You can also do day of week, some other things. You can also, so basically big data time, right? It has also have time inside. You can get hour, millisecond. So basically get almost everything just using this kind of format. All right. And you can also do, for example, if I have 2 days, you can also do calculations, say how many days in the middle. Suppose I have, this is the B date, right? Let's create another date. So data time. So that is current date. Current date. So current date is just simply data time dot now, right? So you just get current system date, right? So if you have 2 days, and then let's say I want to find how many days in the middle, okay? So to do that, you will just do you will just using another object called time span, okay? And the time span is TS, the variable, time span variable. So time span basically just like a time periods. So this is time interval or time period. Okay. So after you declare the variable, now this is how you assign value to it. So TS equals to, you can use the current date minus B date. You can do that. Okay. So basically just say what is, the larger time, then there's a smaller time. Okay. So then you use the minus, and that kind of value can be assigned into time period. And after you have time periods, and you can get number of days in the middle, just the integer days, that will be equal to TS dot days. So you get number of days by using this time span object, and then dot days, and then put that into variable called days. So you can calculate that. Okay. So after you have that, of course, if you want to calculate how old the person is, okay, then you basically say integer age, that will be equal to days, the number of days right here, divided by 365. Okay, so you can do that. So that you can just calculate how many years, how many years old the person is. Okay, so all right. So the data time calculations is done. Okay, and then the last type of instructions. So we talked about 3 types of instructions already. So what are they? So first one is declare variables. Okay, let me do it here. Okay. So declare variables. Second, variable assignment, assign values to variables. To variables. Okay, or variable assignment. Then manipulate variables. Okay, this is for third type of instructions. And then fourth type of instruction is just report content in a variable. So that you understand that everything inside the computer is a binary. So that is same thing with data inside the memory blocks. Okay, so inside the X we have 19, inside the Y we have 24.5, but that is just our interpretation of data is like decimal data, but inside the computer they are all binaries. All right, so we have to ask the computer to tell us what is the data that makes sense to us, that is meaningful to us, right? So whatever inside the memory block to call a job or name, they are text, and I wanted that variable to tell me. I wanted the computer to tell me what are they, okay? What are the data inside those memory blocks? So that you have to write the last type of instruction is basically just report the data inside the variables, okay? And There are many ways to do that. Okay, so for example, you can use like a label, you can text boxes, whatever to show the result. Okay, you can also use, for example, we use the message box, right? So that is one way to do that. Message box, and say data show. Okay, so if you put a job here, so that basically just reporting what is data inside the job title, job variable. Okay. And then, of course, you can make this a little bit more, make more sense. So you can say message box dot show, and put like say job title is, and then this one fixed text, and then plus job. That's a variable, right? So you can make the variable, use a part of variable to make a sentence. Okay, so job title is job whatever manager or salesman, and that we're reporting that instead of this simple way of reporting that. And we can also use that to report data in some calculations, right? So for example, if I want to report, so remember we have double, what was the z, right? Equals to, not z, double A equals to x times y, right? So we wanted to know what is inside this A, right? Variable the result in what we want the calculation result of x multiplied by y. So we can use a message box to report that and say message box dot show, and then you say A. Unfortunately, this time you cannot do it because A is number, and then whatever inside must be like a text. So you have to convert that into text. So this is wrong, okay? Well, so the correct way to do that is the message box dot show, and then you will say convert to string, and then A. And then put it, the A will be converted into text, and then you can use the message box to show it. Okay, or you can also make this as part of a sentence. Okay, so you can just say message box dot show, and then let's say the multiplication of x and y is, okay, and then you plus convert to string A. So this is fixed part of sentence plus this another text, and then basically just add both text together. So that you can just do that. Okay. Now let me tell you that in this case, actually you can get rid of this convert to string thing. So instead, this is equivalent to this. Equivalent to message box dot show, and then the multiplication of x and y is, you can just simply do this, is A. Why is this case we do not need the conversion? That is because of this, because implicit conversion. So we said when you do x times y, this will be converted into, what is it? X was 19, right? And that the 24.5. This will be actually converted into 19.0 times 24.5, because in this operation, the most general type is double. and special type is 19. So the special type will be automatically implicitly converted into general type when we're doing the calculation. So this is so-called implicit casting. Okay, so that is what happened. Let me do it again. So suppose you have 19 divided by 3. So this both will be integer. The result is going to be like 6, right? However, if you do 19 divided by 3.0, and this will be equivalent, will be converted into 19.0 divided by 3.0. So this is implicit casting. So 19 will be actually implicitly converted into 19.0. Okay. Now, what if you have text and the numbers doing calculations? So suppose I have job, okay, plus X. So remember, job was John Doe. Job was a manager, right? This is the manager. And what about X? X was 19, right? So in this case, this 19 will be implicitly converted into text 19. So what does that do is basically will be converted into manager plus 19. So you automatically put double quotes around it. Okay, and this is implicit casting 2. So why is that? Because this is number, this is text, and text is more general than numbers, right? Text is more general than numbers. So the special type 19 will be converted into, implicitly converted into general type automatically when you put those text inside. Okay, now let me do a couple of examples along that way. Okay, so if I have 1 plus 1, can you tell me what is the result? It's not 2, it's actually 11. Okay, let's do it again. Let's say if I have 10 plus 10, that result is going to be, so this time this is text and this is number. So the number will be converted into text before conversion, so before addition. So that would be 10, 10, like that. Okay, so that's why when we have a text, and number, this here, this number is number, and this is text. So then we would just, implicitly put convert these numbers into text before conversion. So that's why convert to string in this case will be not necessary. Unlike the previous case, unlike this case, this A, there's nothing to be, so there's no implicit casting happens, right? So because there's A is not participating in any operations with any other type of data. So A has to be converted into text before can be put inside the message box to show. Okay, but in the second case, you can put this. You do not have to have that. Okay. Now let's one more step. Let's say suppose I want, in this case, I want X and Y to have not just simply just variable names, but also we just want actual variable values. So for example, I want to show the multiplication of 19 and 24.5. So those are the values of variables, right? So I want to treat X and Y as variables, as actual variables, not just text. So how do we do that? So in this case, we are going to perform a very important way of extracting variables out of text. So this is how we do it. Okay, so let's say we have a message box. Message box dot show. Okay, and then the multiplication of X and Y is plus A, right? Now, this is how we do. We want to single this. We want treat this X and Y as variables, not text inside double quotes. Okay, so in other words, I need to take this X and Y out of this text, and this how you do it. Okay, before the variable, before each variable, you add double quotes and a plus. After each variable, you add a plus and double quotes. So this just simply inserted in the original text. Okay, and then do the same thing for this Y. Before the variable, you put double quotes and a plus, and then after the variable, you do plus and double quotes. Okay. So essentially, what do you get? You get like a multiple piece of text to be added. Okay, so you have the multiplication of double quotes. There's one part of text plus X. Okay, so that's implicitly casted the number into like a text. Okay, so X becomes 19 double quotes around it, and then plus again, and then this is another part of text, double quotes, and then space and space double quotes. So there's a third part of text, and the plus Y, and Y is again implicitly casted into text, and then plus, and then this last part of text is not last part. The next part is double quotes, space, and is, space, and double quotes. All right, and then plus the last part is A. A is a number that's implicitly casted in the text. So you can use this approach to single variables out in case you have something inside the text. Okay, let's do it again. Let's say suppose I have some kind of text like this. Okay, the weather today is sunny. It is sunny. Okay, suppose we have a text like that. Okay, now let's try and single this is sunny variable out. So what we do is before the variable, double quotes and a plus, and after the variable, we'll do plus and double quotes. So I'll get a little bit more space here. Okay, so you're going to do plus. Originally you have double quotes here. Okay, plus and then double quotes. Okay. And now you said this originally one sentence. Now you made it like a combination of three text. Combination of this text stop here, this double quote stop here. Okay, and then plus, and then this part is implicitly casted into text, and then this empty space. So this empty basically is like a third part of text. All right, and I think that is all we need to do for today's class. So let me summarize. There's 4 types of variables, 4 types of instructions, and those 4 types of instructions can be, so each one of them is just like an individual elemental statement or instructions or commands. So sometimes we use those names interchangeably. We can say command or statement or instruction. Basically, they are just individual statements, individual commands. Okay, so those are the 4 elemental statements you can write. And then, of course, you're going to use either structured method, structured model, or object-oriented model to organize them into like a structures, right? But the most elemental level is just those 4 things: declare variables, assign values to variables, manipulate the variables, and report content in the variable. And those 4 must be in order. Okay, so before you can assign value to variable, you have to make sure that the variable exists. So what if I just do something like this? Okay, let's say, so write something like this. I will write, say, xy equals to something. Okay, equals to, let's just make up some kind of data here. Let's say 48.9. Okay, so when you have this statement, you're trying to put values into x, y, and then the computer will check, the compiler will check, do you have a variable called x, y yet? We have variable called x, we have variable called y, but we do not have variable called x, y. Okay, so then this one is going to get error. Why? Because we do not have variable x, y yet. So before this one, you have to declare a variable. So in this case, it probably bubble, right? X, y. You have to declare that variable before you can put the data into variable. Make sense? And next, suppose I have some kind of say double a equals to x times y, okay? And then x and y. So in our previous case, we already declared them and already put values into it. But what if I change this to something else? So let's say a equals to h plus g. Okay, now all of a sudden you get many errors. Okay, errors. First of all, when you put things inside this kind of doing manipulations like x plus g, do you really have data for g and data for h yet? You do not. So that's one error. Secondly, let's just try to put data in here. Let's say h equals to house. Okay, g equals to girl. Okay, now let's say we have that. And then you need to ask, do we have variables declared yet? Not yet. So we have to declare them first. So this order must be followed. So you have to declare the variable before you can put the values in the variable. Before you can use the variable for calculations, you have to have values for the variables. Okay, so those three must be in a precise order. And then finally, of course, after only if you have result, you have data inside the variable, then you can you can report the result. You can say what is data, what is value inside, right? So that probably will make sense. So the common mistake the beginners typically make will be, you use a variable, but the variable was not declared, or variable was not assigned a value yet. Okay, so the three things must be in order. Let me go back to here. Just emphasize that one more time. Okay, so if I want to use a message box to show a variable, okay, make sure that variable does exist. So you have to declare that first, all right? And then you also have to have value inside the variable. Okay, so you probably already assigned the value to it, and then or use some kind of manipulation to get a result and put a result into the variable. Okay, and then before you can manipulate the variables, so whatever I put it equal to, less x times x plus y, x minus y, all that kind of things. And then you make sure those x and y already have values. So in other words, steps 2 must be already performed, already have values inside. Okay. So that this is what they have to offer. This logic, okay, has to be followed. And I think we are running out of time. Just 1 minute left. For that 1 minute, I want to just point out a difference between assignment and a comparison. Let me just do that. Okay, let's say sometimes we will do equals. So for example, x equals to 19. Okay, so that is assignment, assign values. So basically, you put 19 into x, and you can use 2 equal signs sometimes, but that is not assignment. That's the comparison. Okay, so don't be confused. So if you put 2 equal sign, some programming language use 2 equal signs, but in C#, in Java, in C++, 2 equal signs means comparisons. So that means is x equals to 19? Okay, make a comparison between them. All right, and that's it. That's all for today. Your code, your homework questions will be posted by tonight or no later than tomorrow morning. Okay. Anybody has a questions at this point? Okay, let me stop. Just